Hello everyone, this is the East Coast Economic Update for October the 5th, 2012. Just some of the stuff that I've been watching, and as we get closer to the 15th of October, I think that we're starting to see what's going on here. Like I said, this is not a prediction, it's just a really good guess, a hypothesis. A few of the things that I've been noticing is this fine little thing, which is there's been an increase of investors buying gold ahead of the U.S. fiscal cliff. People have been buying gold, particularly China, and I'm going to get to China in a second, but all the stuff you can find on Blacklisted News. I just want to make a side note here, I've stopped looking at Google. Google is actually, from my perspective anyway, is not providing the information. I have to go to other sites, and I actually have to go to the same two sites that nobody pulls out from. Even Associated Press, which has its own, and Reuters has its own news ticker, used to be able to set up emails for it. This is all stopped. So Blacklisted News is one of your best places in Drudge Report. I'm just throwing it out there in case you want to follow along. Most of this I found off of Drudge Report, and for example, this one is from our friends at AP. Basically what states here is that as we get closer to the fiscal cliff, the reason why the fiscal cliff was set up, ladies and gentlemen, in case you are not sure why, is because they want to be able to blame one another for what will become the financial collapse. China has bought the most gold over the last, I'd say at least solidly for the last 4 years, and individual Chinese people, no matter how poor or rich they are, hold somewhere between 20 and 30% of their earnings in some sort of solid currency, silver, gold, diamonds, and so forth. India is much more open about it. It's part of their culture. Gold is part of the baseline for marriages and so forth for religious purposes, especially amongst the Hindus and amongst the Sikhs. It pays to go and get a degree in religions. But China has been quietly buying gold, or at least the United States has not been reporting it, have been buying a lot of gold and have not been buying our treasuries. Actually, we, the Federal Reserve, not us, but the Federal Reserve, has been openly in some cases creating dummy companies in the name of Chinese corporations to buy back our bonds. It's reached a critical point. It actually reached a critical point in 2008 when little Timmy Geithner, as I refer to him, went to China and was basically on both knees begging Hu Jintao to buy our bonds. When they said no, and they did say no, ladies and gentlemen, the national, their government news sites were stating that they did not stop Timmy Geithner and Bernanke from creating dummy companies in their names, in Chinese company names, like made-up Chinese company names. The big open secret that everybody in Wall Street knows is that these companies are just biding time to allow people to be lulled into the next big drop, and that will be the financial cliff. It will not, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, it will not be saved. We are probably going to default, which we should have done 4 years ago, but now it's much worse, and we're going to see a definite drop into the power of individual states, and I will get into that at the end. Secondly, I just wanted to point out in the same line discussing China. I'm reading a quote here from the Japanese Times, English edition, of course, because I'm not that, whatever. China banks snub IMF World Bank events. Lately, except for the exception of the BRIC meetings and the meeting that was held in Tehran, China has not been refusing to associate with the IMF or the World Bank. Now, Russia just signed an agreement with the World Trade Organization only because they were able to negotiate a position of voting rights on the G8 and of course now the G20, but they are all part of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and that is how the United States and most of the countries, except for Turkey, have been held back from attacking Syria. Rightly so, but we'll get into that. But as we know, China knows it is going to become the world reserve currency, or it's at least going to share the world reserve currency with Russia. Both of them have petrodollars and, well, what will be petro-rubles soon, no doubt. And the renminbi, even though China still is a producing war horse and workhorse, we find that China is also in a recession. And unfortunately, when China now sneezes, the rest of us drop dead of a cold. But because of their savings rate, and Jim Rogers has said this in RT and a number of other places a couple of weeks ago, that their savings rate is because they historically remember how during World War I into World War II, they were considered the sick man of Asia, and how they were downtrodden by both all the major imperial powers, them being Japan and the Western countries. China has a long memory, a memory that would embarrass an elephant, and they are going to punish us for the Boxer Rebellion, I'm telling you right now, for the Nanking rape, and for all the stuff that we did during World War II and the onslaughts of other years during the Cold War. They know what it's like to suffer. They continue to suffer, for good or for bad. And we have to know that China is going to wait for us to fall flat on our face, and they're going to stand on us, and they're going to squeeze. They're going to put weight on that foot. And that's the truth. So one last thing I wanted to point out, which I think is related to, I think personally, it's related to what's happening in the Middle East, and primarily what's happening in Tehran and in Iran and in Israel, which may seem at first an unrelated situation. This is from Bloomberg, and the article is entitled "California Gas Stations Shut as Oil Refineries Ration Supplies." There's been a slow and quiet, or maybe not so quiet, peak oil moment. We have been in a peak oil moment, and I know Goat Hollow, hey there, Doug, has been saying this for years. We reached a point of peak oil way back in 2002. There was an article in National Geographic and also in Life magazine, which is interesting to note. Back in 2001, 2002, they said at the end of cheap oil was the article. I remember it, and I have it somewhere in a drawer. The argument here now is, why is Iran building a nuclear power site? Because just like Libya, who tried to do it, just like Iran, Iraq tried to do it, Syria has been doing it, Saudi Arabia is thinking about doing it. It's because they can't drill for oil fast enough to keep up, even with depressed supply. Meaning we're in depression, and we're not even using as much oil, gas, and electricity as we did even 4 years ago. And the fact remains that I honestly believe, and I hope that I am correct, and I think I am, Iran is creating a nuclear processing plant to create electricity, so Persia and the old Mesopotamian Empire can sustain long after the oil dries up and they're left back to the way they were before 1914, when folks like the Brits and the French, what really caused World War I, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, not to sound like Howard Zinn, but the reason why World War I started was because guys like Winston Churchill and others in the British offices knew that coal was running out and oil was going to be the new fuel of the world. And they needed to carve it up, and they didn't care how many bodies they had to do it. I mean, how many wars do you know have started in our lifetime, or any lifetime except for World War I, because of some far-off Archduke Ferdinand getting shot by some Serbian anarchist? Think about it. World War I is a joke. It's just an amazing, why did we get into this war? We got into this war for oil. That was the first blood for oil conversation right there in Serbia. They did it so they could go, while everybody was killing each other off in Europe, they could go and secure all the places where oil was located. And in fact, countries like Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and so forth, and the concept of the Arab, the term Arab, did not exist prior to 1914. Actually, prior to 1917, 1919. And if you don't believe me, instead of going online, read Encyclopedia Britannica and watch Lawrence of Arabia. It's probably the most accurate historical stories if you're looking at the post-World War I effort. It was all about oil. It's always been about oil. We all know this. So I think that we're going to find ourselves on the wrong end of the fuel world, and we already are. We're already on the wrong end of the debt world. And it's all going to culminate into this fiscal cliff, and we're going to be watching something fall off a cliff, and the reality is we have been already falling for quite a long time, particularly approximately 24 to 36 months. So this is where everything is going to start to stick. I predict that one of two things is going to happen, and I'm saying prediction with a small p, and I hope I'm wrong, that out of desperation to keep control of the Western populations, to keep control of the fact that the world will suddenly start to see that we have no clothes, we have no power, and we have no pull as a world policeman. We're destabilizing all these countries and propping up Israel as best we can, because unfortunately, if everything goes, arms and legs up, there'll be a second mass exodus, and it's not going to be good for my people, and it's definitely not going to be good for us as an American country. So I leave you with those thoughts. The hyperlink to Blacklisted News is there. Use it. Start to use that and Drudge before that gets usurped. Till next time, peace.